I won't say Happy New Year, but I will say Happy Apotheosis. And that's just a fancy word that means being elevated to the status of divine or the highest part of something. So while we're in a major turning point in our annual story that we each go through, it's not the end of the story, it's just the entry into the third act. So this is another Kundalini Chrism yoga update, your mother tongue. And I'm not going to speak today in terms of the chakra system. I'm going to talk about the myth wheel and how the pattern of myth is playing out in our lives through this language in the mother's body. The myth wheel is the mother's body. She's a storyteller. And she weaves her red thread of myth and story in our lives. So we've all just had the second act climax, the dark night of the soul. I don't know about you, but I went through a month of that. I even got physically ill, and I came face to face with my own shadow, right? So I had a story that kicked off in March, like you've had a story that kicked off. Think about what theme was playing out, what you wanted, what goal you wanted, right? What did you want? That's the essence of storytelling, right? I wanted connection. What was the wound that was coming up against you? We're not very clear about the wound until the second act climax that we've just had. The hero doesn't know their wound. Think about your favorite movie. At that point in the second act climax, it's the darkest before the dawn for the hero, right? They come face to face with their wound and they're like, oh, that's what I'm doing. That's why I can't get my goal. That's why my goal has been hard to grasp, because I've been blind to my own shadow and egoic wound. So there's a wound that always gets in the way of the goal, right? I thought my wound was illusion, but it's actually dissociation. And I realize that now in my last month of the dark night of the soul. And the dark night of the soul is this disintegration, this alchemical fermentation where it all comes to a head and we see the shadow, right? We grasp the serpent and we see the root problem in ourselves. What the wound is internally, the shadow becomes conscious. So in Jungian terms, the shadow is no longer unconscious, it becomes conscious. And when this happens, we then see the third act occur in a movie, right? Which is where we are now. The hero then steps out for apotheosis. And apotheosis is the journey back up. Having realized the flaw or the shadow, right? You see this in movies as well, right? The hero is like, oh, this is what I'm doing. Now I'm going to step into my third act and I'm going to embody something higher. I'm going to wear new shoes and do things differently and approach my life differently because I've understood something about my life and myself, right? So that's why it's called apotheosis, because it's the elevation into the status of divine or the highest part of something. So in story form, it goes, this was your original status in March. You've gone on a journey, and at apotheosis, you come into a higher place. So every year we elevate higher as we integrate a wound, right? So we've now stepped out into apotheosis, and we are the third act of embodying the new thing, embodying the higher thing, elevating to the status of divine, right? And it's akin to, we've just come through and we're in the 6th stage of alchemy. There's 7 stages. We're in the 6th stage, and it's called distillation. And distillation is when you distill the highest part of something, right? The higher essence comes out of the dense stuff. And this has happened to us. We've been distilled through our personal stories. I've had obstacles that have come along my path, right? The mother is a storyteller. She weaves the story. So I've had encounters with people that have pushed my journey and forced me into having a revelation at this time of year. And you've probably also had obstacles. Think about what was happening around June, July, May, June, and a similar theme. So that was part of your journey, and it's carrying the same theme as what's just happened now. But what just happened now was the culmination of it, right? So you see this in great crafted films, in great story. You see a theme being worked. There's not a bunch of themes going on. There's a similar thing that happens, right? So something happened to me in June, an interaction, an obstacle, and then something happened to me recently, and it's the exact same theme. It's different people, it's a different context, it's a different texture, but the same theme is at play, and it's the same wound at play in me, right? So yeah, think about what you've been wanting, and the wound that came into sight now recently at the second act climax, and the distillation, right? The unconscious becomes conscious, and now we walk into apotheosis, and we journey out to go back up the arc and embody this new higher thing. And by March, this embodiment will be nearly through. It's pretty much over as the new story begins, right? But the tail end of it really finishes in June. I won't go into the full theory here, but yeah, so I'm interested to hear. I always want to test these theories because I'm just following my own gnosis, and I love hearing if you're feeling this, that it is a turning point, but that you're emerging out of something, you're going into your apotheosis, you're elevating into something higher in yourself. Perfect though with Sagittarius and Capricorn, right? Perfect time to elevate higher, to climb the mountain. Sagittarius giving us the big expansive awareness, and then we hit Capricorn to push through and climb up and finish the third act, right? The third act is still a great part of the film, and the character is still going through stuff, right? But it's not, you're not blind to something anymore. You're actually empowered now because you see something, and you're trying life in a new, higher, more healthy way. Does that ring true for you? Sending love.